Wow. If it howls like a wolf, if it looks like a wolf, is it really a money-making scheme? Welcome everyone once again to the CM Kozemen podcast. Today will be a brief one, but I just cannot let my opinions on the recent quote-unquote de-extinction of the dire wolves by an American biotech company named Colossal Biosciences go unrecorded. So let's give a recap of what happened in the year of our Lord 2025. On the 7th of April, a video was released showing two extremely cute white fluffy wolf dog kinds of puppies howling, and the caption said, "After 10,000 years, the dire wolf is back again." And here they are howling. And this company came out and they said they used dire wolf DNA to recreate this long extinct animal, just like Jurassic Park. And for those of you who don't know, the dire wolf is a separate species of wolf. Some say a separate species of canid altogether. The scientific name is Aenochion dirus, and for posterity, normal wolves, things like a timber wolf, for example, is classified as Canis lupus. I know these are all man-made genera and human concepts, but still they're quite distinct things. A dire wolf is not any wolf. Most scientists believe it was a completely different kind of canid, something more like a giant jackal actually. And for posterity, let's also give a description of where this animal lived. If you have been to the La Brea tar pits near Los Angeles, there's a display there that looks like a goddamn Nike Air shoe store with rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of giant dire wolf skulls that are preserved on the wall, and they just look like a shoe store. These things lived in a kind of savanna-like environment, or in the very least warmish broadleaf forests, and they were contemporaries with giant ground sloths, mastodons, and a bunch of other Pleistocene era mammals. So it's kind of surprising to see the recreated dire wolf look like something out of the Game of Thrones, because the animals that were shown to us by Colossal Biosciences and later on in the Time magazine look kind of polar. They had like white fur, really shaggy looking animals, more like a furry person's approximation of a wolf. It is still an interesting and eye-catching animal nevertheless. But this, among other things, was a question mark. Is this really a de-extincted dire wolf? So the company claims they use dire wolf DNA to remake these animals. And at first I thought, maybe, because of all these specimens that were preserved in the La Brea tar pits, and they're quite a recent animal, I thought, wow, they really fucking went and did it. They really took the DNA of this animal, isolated it, and somehow implanted the DNA, cloned it in the blank egg cell of a wolf or a dog, like a carrier mother, and this animal was born again. And I was really excited, as were so many other people. But then it turned out, as we read the research, Colossal Biosciences said something to the effect of, we just examined the dire wolf DNA, and then we took a regular wolf, and using CRISPR technology, which is a newfangled, very effective technology to edit genes, it just matured in the last decade, and it is really indeed on its own, CRISPR is a really groundbreaking technology. Okay, so they used CRISPR DNA editing to edit 14 genes in the gray wolf DNA to quote-unquote make it resemble the dire wolf genome. Now, here's a disappointment already, because looks like they just tweaked the genes of a normal wolf, okay? And I don't know how they made it resemble the dire wolf DNA. Did they edit the genome so that the genome of the wolf was somehow cropped and edited to look like the actual code of the dire wolf DNA, which they claim they recovered? But then again, they talk about 14 changes. So was the gray wolf DNA only 14 changes away from the dire wolf DNA? Or did they just randomly make 14 changes and produced an animal which they think resembled a dire wolf. And we have lots of evidence to suggest this was actually the case, because turns out this was a cosmetic operation. A representative of Colossal Biosciences said that our concept of a species is a morphological one and not a phylogenetic one. So in sciencey terms, this person just said, oh, we believe species are what they look like and not what their DNA is like, which is actually, I mean, this is something that could be taught in philosophy classes, you know. What makes a duck a duck? What makes a wolf a wolf? Usually, before the age of science, people would say, okay, a wolf is a big, hairy, brown animal. It's a predator that looks like a big dog. Okay. Then as we understood more about comparative biology, we saw that wolves are related to other canids like foxes, dingoes, African hunting dogs and stuff like that. Then as we understood how genes work, we kind of established an actual clade really connecting wolves to all these other animals, because now we could see how their DNA was related and how close each species was to another. And now out comes these Colossal Biosciences people, and they say, okay, we don't actually believe in phylogeny or even genes. We just think a species is what it looks like. We have a morphological species concept. I mean, by this logic, you could take a fat chow chow dog, okay, and then take a spray can of white paint, paint it white, and then take another spray can of black spray paint, and then give that thing black eyes and a black mouth and black ears and some other black spots and make it look like a goddamn panda and say, we have recreated a panda. Why? They would say. But you will say, because I have a morphological species concept. And I am not making this up. This comes up in an interview with the Colossal Biosciences director in the New Scientist magazine. Actually, you will find a load of resources in the video description and the pinned comment alongside the Patreon donation panhandling bit. And if you want more evidence and more things to read about this incident, that will be your place to go. Just consult the references. I mean, I know a thing or two about media and public relations and media interviews, and it looks like the person at New Scientist kind of pressed this representative from Colossal into a corner, and then she just said the most relevant thing to get out of that situation, which was, we have a morphological concept of the species, which would actually put you in a minority of one in the age of genetic science and cladistics, which would be twice as ironic given that you are a genetic company. They actually call themselves the De-Extinction Company. What should we de-extinct next? The dodo? You got him. The thylacine? You got him. Mammoths? Working on it. That kind of thing. But we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, of course. And this actually reminds me of this one particular scene in Jurassic Park, okay? In the book, that is to say, not the movie, which is actually a seminal and really thought-provoking book. When you get past the dinosaurs, Jurassic Park is, I think, a wonderful book about man's insatiable and suicidal desire to control nature. Anyways, there's a scene between John Hammond and Henry Wu, and they're talking about the dinosaurs in the book. And here is what they say. What's wrong with them? Asks Hammond. Nothing, Wu said, except that they're not real dinosaurs. That's what I asked for, Henry, Hammond said, smiling, and that's what you gave me. I know, Wu said, but you see, he paused. How could they explain this to Hammond? Hammond hardly ever visited the island, and it was a peculiar situation that Wu was trying to convey. Wu goes on, right now as we stand here, almost no one in the world has ever seen an actual dinosaur. Nobody knows what they're really like. Yes, the dinosaurs we have now are real, Wu said, pointing to the screens around the room. But in certain ways, they are unsatisfactory, unconvincing. I could make them better. Better in what way? Asks Hammond. For one thing, they move very fast, Henry Wu said. People aren't accustomed to seeing large animals that are so quick. I'm afraid the visitors will think the dinosaurs look speeded up, like film running too fast. But Henry, these are real dinosaurs. You said so yourself. I know, but we could easily only breed slower, more domesticated dinosaurs. Domesticated dinosaurs? Hammond snorted. Nobody wants domestic dinosaurs, Henry. They want the real thing. But that's my point. I don't think they do. They want to see their expectation, which is quite different. Hammond was frowning. You said yourself, John. This park is entertainment, Henry Wu said. And entertainment has nothing to do with reality. Entertainment is antithetical to reality. But if we do that, Hammond said, the dinosaurs wouldn't be real. But they're not real now, said Wu. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There isn't any reality here. He shrugged helplessly. He could see he wasn't getting through. Hammond had never been interested in technical detail, and the essence of the argument was technical. How could he explain to Hammond about the reality of DNA dropouts, the patches, the gaps in the sequence that Wu had been obliged to fill in, making the best guesses he could, but still making guesses? The DNA of the dinosaurs was like an old photograph that had been retouched, basically the same as the original, but in some places repaired, edited, and clarified. And as a result, and on they go, in the movies, Henry Wu is the more opportunistic, kind of evil, silent guy, and John Hammond is the more grandfatherly, more like David Attenborough-coded, loving father figure. But actually in the book, John Hammond is a thick-minded corporate boss figure, and Henry Wu is a dejected, cynical nerd. And I just love the Jurassic Park for these visions of human drama, because they're all too real. As you grow up and you move on from dinosaurs to dealing with actual monsters that are people, you see that scenes like this are all too real. And the book itself has a lot to say about science and the philosophy of science and the weird and often evil intersection of science with commercial technology. And I really recommend reading the original Jurassic Park book just for that. And let's go back to Colossal Biosciences right now, because probably not in their modus operandi, but in their essence, they are really something out of Jurassic Park in the way that I just described you. Because if you take a deeper dive into the Colossal Laboratories and Biosciences website, you will see a lot of stuff there that would be charitably described as window dressing. And if you look at their team, you got some controversial figures there. One of them, for example, is Forrest Galante. That's Forrest Galante. And I don't want to get in too deep into this muck, but suffice it to say he's a controversial figure. He goes to all these far-off places and claims to discover animals that nobody else had seen, and maybe he's just the world's best animal explorer, you know, that's a non-zero possibility. But more recently he shared, in 2023, he shared pictures of a thylacine which somebody supposedly encountered, and well, some of those pictures looked quite similar to a model that was out there. So yeah, like Forrest Galante is a man of colorful claims, let us say. And furthermore, in the Colossal Biosciences team, you got people like the author of the Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin, acting as a cultural advisor, and he apparently cried when he heard the wolves howl for the first time. Wow. And then later on, the dire wolf puppies were rushed to the private collection of Peter Jackson, the guy who directed the Hobbit movies and the Lord of the Rings, because he has the prop throne from the Game of Thrones TV series in his collection, alright? And they took these GM animals and they posed them on the throne because it's just like the Game of Thrones, alright? Wow. If these guys ever get around to cloning a woolly mammoth, or maybe just editing an Indian elephant embryo's genes so that it's hairier, I don't know, they should get the author Stephen Baxter on board, because he's got a great trilogy of hard science fiction books called the Mammoth Trilogy, and it's all about a race of intelligent mammoths trying to survive at the end of the Ice Age. The 3 books are called Silverhair, Long Tusk, and Ice Bones, and I really recommend them. But yeah, why would a company specializing in quote-unquote de-extinction need to have a sci-fi author as a cultural advisor? Is this person able to offer any commentary about how these animals or this technology may impact the world. I don't think so. I think from what we've seen, it looks like they're only concerned with looking cool. And when I brought this up on Twitter a few days ago, some people came out of the woodwork saying, don't be so cynical, this is still a great technology. Americans have got the gumption, they got the go-getter spirit, they're gonna break new grounds in genetic science. And one of these commenters actually said, not like the Europeans who just don't do anything and are cynical and always criticize others. And to this I could say, oh boy, I don't know which rock you've been living under, but the Europeans, you may critique them about other things, but the Europeans actually had a real and viable de-extinction program of their own, which is, I think, ecologically and even culturally far more relevant than this husky puppy show. I am of course talking about the Tauros program, which is a multinational, mainly Europe-based program to recreate the giant relative of cows called the Aurochs in Europe to restore European ecosystems. And they've also been using recovered Aurochs DNA, and they've been trying to crossbreed different cows to create an approximation of the Aurochs. But these people are not making stuff up like these other guys, these Colossal guys have been making stuff up. They're very honest about it, and maybe that's why this project to restore the Aurochs has slipped under the radar. But if you look at the video description and in my pinned comment, you can see a link to the Aurochs project as well. And I really wonder why Colossal Biosciences didn't just say the obvious and just say, we are a company that makes exciting new genetically engineered pets. You could still have these big wolves or other weird cat pets. You could have a giant white lion. I don't know, they could do anything. And I think they would have a list of clients ready and willing to buy their animals. I'm talking about American tech bros, Arab sheikhs, or Russian oligarchs. They would line up to buy these designer pets any day of the week. But if you do that, you wouldn't be the first, would you? I think the whole claim about being the De-Extinction company, and it's really funny, it's not a De-Extinction company, it's the De-Extinction company. Apparently these guys are the only people in the business, and it's just so smarmy, I'm sorry. But yeah, if they just said they were a company making cool genetically modified pets, they would not be the first. Because actually, there are some companies out there already creating genetically modified pets. Of course, I am talking about GloFish. That's GLO Fish. This American company that splices bioluminescent jellyfish genes into aquarium fish. And they actually got quite a cute and colorful line of glow-in-the-dark aquarium fish you can get. They got angelfish, barbs, cory, danios, tetras, longfin tetras, all these weird and wonderful cute fish that already exist as zany, genetically modified pets anybody can buy and enjoy. In that respect, I'm not principled against genetic modification of pets. People have been doing far more drastic things to animals and plants by just selective breeding, and genetic technology, be it CRISPR or otherwise, is just another way to do this. But I would just invite you to compare the websites of GloFish with the website of Colossal Biosciences, and you will see the difference between an actual company that, creates an actual value versus something more like a front. Okay, they're honest about at least making these wolves, these not so dire wolves that probably don't look like anything like the actual dire wolves, but anyways, they made this weird fancy genetically edited big pet dog. Okay? But if you look at their webpage, it's just so dense. All the text feels like it's slogans. They make a claim about, extinction is a big threat and only by de-extinction can we save the coral reefs or the jungles or something. So what are they gonna do? They're gonna clone the delicate tiny algae that die off and cause coral reef bleaching? I don't know what their game is, because their claim is restoring the Earth's ecosystem. And what they actually do is creating these fancy big white elephant sorts of pets. One does not match the other. You can't restore ecosystems that way. At least certainly not coral reefs like they claim to be able to solve. But anyways, just go compare the websites of GloFish and Colossal Biosciences and you would see the difference between actual genetic engineering in action versus a heavily PR-driven, dare I say, stunt gig with, what was it? A morphological concept of the species. That's a new one. And before we wrap it up, I would also like to voice my biggest irritation about this thing. It's not that they claim to de-extinct an animal and actually not do it. It's not that their corporate front and some of their human resources are, let us say, a little sketchy. It is the fact that they name these newborn wolves Romus, Remulus, and Khaleesi. And if you stop to think about it, these are like the exact names calculated to get a reaction out of people with lots of money and little tact, you know. They're just problem for billionaires. Romus and Remulus. Why? Because it's about the Roman Empire. Khaleesi. Why? Because, well, George Martin is on the board. And also, it's about Game of Thrones, you know, just like in the Game of Thrones. What are they gonna do next? Goddamn. I mean, this is like one very, very weird thing about Americans. They got training, okay? You know, they can do technical stuff really well. They don't quite fucking know what to do with it. They are trained but not educated. Maybe it comes from not having royalty in their country, because for all their problems, royalties historically have been a source for power that could laugh down and snub the noses of people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. And with them gone, now you got a really weird set of people running the show. Or maybe running the show into the ground as we seem to be experiencing these days in early April 2025. Anyways, I didn't want to get too political about this, and you know, I would be happy to be corrected. Maybe if you are coming from Colossal Biosciences and if you would like to prove to me that I was wrong and you actually really did somehow use the actual genes of the dire wolf, I would be happy to be proven wrong. If you are a viewer who's just coming in and if you disagree, just let it be known in the comments. If you agree, also let it be known in the comments. And if you like this show, please consider subscribing to my channel, or heck, who knows, even subscribing to my Patreon. The links are in the pinned comment below. As always, have a nice day everybody, and I love you all. We are entering a time in world history where the almost satanic overreach of the techno-scientific fantasies ruling the world for the past 30 years is finally tumbling down, and I hope you all stay safe out there. And yeah, that's that. Goodbye.